Hey, I'm Marcus. I've ridden motorcycles across half the country, seen deserts, mountains, storms, and cities that never seemed to sleep. But nothing I witnessed on the road ever stayed with me, the way one afternoon did. It started at a gas station outside a small town, my riding group, and I had stopped for fuel and coffee. Before continuing our trip, we were laughing, sharing stories, and enjoying the warm weather when a thin boy, no older than 12, walked toward us. His clothes were clean but worn, and his shoes looked 2 sizes too small. He stared at our motorcycles for a moment, before gathering enough courage to speak. His voice trembled slightly as he looked at me and pointed toward an old bicycle he was pushing. "Buy my bike, sir," he said quietly. "Mommy hasn't eaten in 2 days." At first I thought he might be exaggerating. Kids sometimes say dramatic things when they need money, but there was something in his eyes that stopped me from dismissing him. There was no manipulation there, only desperation, the kind that comes from carrying worries. No child should ever have to carry. I crouched beside him and asked where his mother was. Instead of answering immediately, he looked down at the ground and swallowed hard, as though speaking the truth hurt more than staying silent. The boy finally pointed toward a rundown neighborhood a few blocks away. He explained that his mother was sick and unable to work. She had sold nearly everything they owned to pay bills. The bicycle was the last valuable thing left. He said she thought he was visiting a friend because she would never allow him to sell it. As he spoke, my friends slowly stopped their conversations and listened. One of the toughest riders in our group, a man who rarely showed emotion, looked away to hide the tears forming in his eyes. I asked the boy how much he wanted for the bike. He named a price so small that it felt like a punch to the chest. It was worth several times more. I handed him enough money to buy groceries for weeks, but he immediately shook his head and tried to give some back. He insisted that he only wanted the amount the bicycle was worth. That honesty told me everything. I needed to know about the family he came from. My friends and I exchanged glances. Something wasn't right. A hard-working mother should not have been starving. While her child tried to sacrifice his only possession, we decided to follow the boy home, not because we were curious, but because we felt responsible. Sometimes life places a story directly in front of you, and walking away is not an option. The house stood at the end of a cracked street, lined with aging buildings. Paint peeled from the walls and weeds pushed through broken concrete. The boy hesitated before opening the front door. Inside, the place was almost empty. A small table, 2 chairs, and a worn couch were all that remained. Sitting near a window was his mother. She looked exhausted but still carried herself with dignity. When she saw several bikers entering behind her son, confusion spread across her face. The boy immediately confessed what he had done. He expected anger, but instead she hugged him tightly and began crying. Through tears, she apologized to us for the trouble. She explained that she had once owned a successful bakery that supported both of them comfortably. Her pastries were famous throughout town. Life had been stable until her husband died unexpectedly several years earlier. After his death, relatives who had never cared about the family suddenly appeared. Offering help and advice, she trusted them. Looking back, she admitted that trust had been her greatest mistake. Piece by piece, they convinced her to sign documents she barely understood while she struggled through grief. By the time she realized what had happened, much of her property and savings had legally disappeared into their hands. My friends and I sat quietly while she continued speaking. The deeper the story went, the worse it became. The relatives had manipulated her finances, transferred ownership of her bakery, and left her drowning in debt. They spread rumors claiming she was irresponsible with money, causing former customers and business partners to distance themselves. Every attempt to fight back required lawyers she could not afford. Eventually she lost the bakery, then her car, and finally, most of her belongings. Yet through all of it, she refused to speak badly about anyone in front of her son. She wanted him to grow up kind, not bitter. Hearing that made the room feel heavier than ever. We asked whether she had any proof. To our surprise, she pulled out a folder filled with documents, receipts, and court records. She had spent years gathering evidence, but lacked the resources to use it effectively. One writer in our group happened to be a retired investigator. Another owned a successful construction company and had connections with local attorneys. They began examining the paperwork immediately. The mother seemed embarrassed by the attention, as if accepting help was somehow selfish. But none of us saw it that way. We saw a woman who had been robbed not only of money, but also of opportunity, security, and peace. And we were no longer willing to stand by while injustice continued. Over the next several weeks, our motorcycle club became involved in ways none of us expected. We organized. Thank you for reading this story all the way to the end. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps this channel grow and allows me to bring you more emotional, inspiring, and unforgettable stories. I'm working hard to reach my first 1,000 subscribers, and every subscription makes a huge difference. Share this story with your friends and let me know in the comments what you would have done in this situation. Thank you for being part of this journey, and I'll see you in the next story.